Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Mike. Cool. Awesome.
That we're proposing that on the basis of Martin's feedback that we would clarify one of the recommendations that is around to consult.
Yeah.
Is
Okay.
that right?
Yeah. That's fine.
So Steffi's got it to go, and Andrew's going to talk to it.
And Martin's also got it.
Yeah. Beginning. We
Nice.
just need to work out how that goes through because Martin tabling it.
Yeah.
Martin's tabling up.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Is that right, Stephen? Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
Yes.
Yes. So there's two.
So there is one
There's a
that needs to be clarified and
Yeah.
then additional.
So we clarify first and then put his on?
And then he'll adjust.
Okay, fine.
He'll add. Yeah.
Because that one can be.
Cool. Yeah, just making sure we're all on the same page. All right, kia ora team. We'll just get your attention back on the hui. Thank you. So we're now on item 8.2, smoke-free parks and playgrounds policy review. So we'll pass over to Ange in just a second. But as a reminder, this is just the approval to consult on the smoke-free policy. We have had a workshop and also the Social Sustainability Subcommittee has discussed this. And after Angela has made some opening comments, I'll pass to Martin to give a brief update as to the conversation that was had at the Social Sustainability Subcommittee. Also, the Cancer Society, Public Health and Smoke Free have been worked alongside in the development of this policy. And to note that I'm also aware Councillor Halliday has an additional recommendation he would like to include. So once we pass over to him, I'm sure he'll make us aware of what that is. Cool, thank you, over to you.
Kia ora koutou. So today we are indeed seeking your agreement to consult on our revised smoke-free parks and playgrounds policy. And I will broadly take this as read. We have had some previous conversations about it, and the draft you see in front of you today is reflecting what we've talked about in those conversations and some feedback from some key stakeholders that we have had some early engagement with. Just in terms of one point of clarification that we are going to make in the recommendations, thanks Martin for bringing this up, we just want to note that recommendation A, where we're seeking to agree, it says agree to expand the policy. What we want to say is agree to consult on an expanded policy, just to make it really clear what we're agreeing. So we'll make sure that that's reflected. But otherwise, happy to take this as read and pass over to Martin to discuss.
Over to you, Martin.
Through you, Madam Chair. I will have a couple of questions, but I'm just introducing things here. Look, thank you very much. A couple of years ago, we were down at local government conference, and a lovely lady from the Wellington Regional, Catherine, is it? Yep. Showed me a nice little diagram, which we didn't really have a very good footprint on, if you like. In fact, we only had one footprint on it and everyone else had about 12. And it was in relation to what we're doing in the smoke-free space and with regards to our smoking policy. And I must admit to being a little bit embarrassed about that situation. So we brought it to the attention of council officers, and I'm comforted to see where we're at with this now. And I think the Cancer Society and the people that have been involved in putting this paper together have been very happy as well. At the Social Sustainability Committee, this is something I wanted to move straight through to this committee for the simple reason this is stuff that's already been really in train, but it needs to be addressed sooner rather than later, and we didn't really want to slow anything down as such. So very happy to see that we're going out for consultation and we can put some things in place sooner rather than later. What we had at the Social Sustainability was really a presentation with regards to where we're at and where we're moving to from here. Some questions were asked, and I'm sure some of those questions will again be asked today in a wider context, but great to see that the paper's here nice and promptly and we can move forward with it. The main thing I'm going to say that came out of the SSC meeting was vaping. The issues that we have in vaping, not just in our community, but as a country. I think we're way behind the eight ball, and I'm not talking about us as a as a local council, but from a central government perspective, there needs to be more done in this space a heck of a lot quicker. This problem's getting out of, well, I'm not saying it's getting out of control, it's out of control. And there needs to be stronger controls put in place. If I was going to use a comparison, it would be like the psychedelic substances situation, where something's come through and it sort of falls through the gaps on policy. Well, those gaps need to be shut, and they need to be shut fast. When we've got schools closing toilets at lunchtime because of the proliferation of vaping, and kids can't use the toilet because of that, that's just wrong. So I'm looking forward to movement in this space, but also putting a very strong message to our government and our community that we are not happy with vaping, and we want to see tighter controls and pretty much want it phased out as much as we can. As such. I'll leave it at that, and look forward to seeing what the questions are as we move into this paper.
Kia ora, Councillor Halliday. Any questions from the table? All good. Councillor Coe.
Yes, look, I just note the comments around how hard these things are to enforce. Does this really have any impact? I mean, we can put as many signs as we like around the place, but if it's that hard to enforce, is this really just a waste of time? I would like to think not, but and I note also the comment there that the preferred approach is around education and positive encouragement and feedback rather than punishing people. So is that really should that be where we put our effort rather
And I guess off the back of that too, how are we going to measure how effective that approach or specific way of educating is, and reflect on ways we could be doing it better as well?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Coe. I actually asked the team to put up on the screen page 66 of the report that you have, and it does refer to Councillor Halliday's comment about a picture that has one thing in it for the Kapiti Coast District Council, and other activities and actions that other districts in our region are undertaking around smoke-free policy. I think the role of local government in supporting smoke-free is in some ways in a narrow space in terms of our ability to enforce, but part of our role, I think, is more in the health promotion space and supporting the awareness, the education, and instilling some settings to encourage people in the community to be aware, to understand, and to have choice. And I think that is what our policy does. Currently, you'll see that there's just a tree there, which was it's actually referring to green spaces. And what we are trying to do through this process is really to extend that influence, to be making sure that we're putting our best foot forward to ensure we're supporting the right conversation in the community. So there are other people who are involved in this space, and I think when we come back and talk about our health strategy and bringing different parts of the community, key stakeholders and partners together on some of these issues, that is when you'll see the power to drive change. I think this is us trying to put our foot forward and to say we can do more in the role that we have.
Councillor Halliday.
I'll go last, Madam Chair, if that's all right. I've got 5 questions here, but they might get covered by other people's. Or I'm happy to go now. I have 5 questions.
Yeah, maybe can we go around the other?
Quite happy to.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Councillor Warwick.
My question is around cost. If we're going to be upgrading signs and stuff, we don't have any information here. And like what Liz said, what is the benefit of what we might have to pay to put into this? I support not vaping in places, but
there will be a small cost of upgrading signs or putting new signs in place, but it's expected that can be covered within existing budgets, either as things get renewed anyway, or it's not considered out of a significant expense that would need to budget for.
Was that all of your questions, Councillor Warwick? Just that one? Yeah, okay, cool. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just a question, and we do have a living example, but in Porirua, for instance, there was a dairy, and the dairy just, I'm not having a go at Porirua, but they've got lots of little pictures which
Is
makes
this
it
a
look quite
question,
impressive.
Councillor Wilson?
And so the dairy became a vape store opposite a school. So we have in Waikanai a dairy/vape store. Now the question is, what ability does council have to determine whether or not that's an acceptable thing to have? Now there is a section. What some of the dairies do is they put a little wall or whatever, and then they put an R18 sign. But anecdotally, Porirua will tell you, everybody knows that when you have a dairy that's also a vape store, kids can go into the store, and they do go into the store. So the question is, what ability do we have to either enforce, control, license, or otherwise in that circumstance?
So council itself doesn't have any particular ability to manage that, other than through kind of generic district plan provisions, but I wouldn't imagine they would be particularly effective. I would just note that the new legislation that's been recently announced, which is expected to be enforced it was expected to be enforced from this month, but it must be soon, has new regulations that will prevent new specialist vape shops from being able to open within 300 metres of schools in marae. So that is going to be regulated from a national level. Obviously, there's an argument about whether 300 metres is enough and what constitutes a specialist vape store, and whether that covers a dairy that also sells. But that's currently where the regulation around that location of vape stores is in place.
If I may just also add to that, at the social subcommittee, we had our partners from the public health service here, and they made mention to us that a further step that councils can take, it wouldn't be in this policy, but it would be part of our health strategy discussion, is advocating through to ministers for stronger steps to be taken in legislation. And so at the moment, legislation has mainly focused on limiting the amount of nicotine and what are the more available, cheaper vaping options, which younger people are more likely to use. And so I think there's more steps that can be taken outside of this policy around some of the broader issues that we face in communities. And this is meant in a respectful way, asking central government to put more legislative tools in place that enable firmer steps to be taken.
Kia ora, Chris. And I think the additional recommendation that Martin is seeking to put on the table will provide us with the opportunity to clearly send that message to central government in regards to vaping. So we'll get to that in a minute, or maybe if it can be put up on the screen shortly, that would be great. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for this. It's great that this is going out to public consultation and we can have some real good conversations around this. So two questions I've got. So 25.3 mentions that it's too heavy-handed to prohibit people from smoking in their homes, which is fair enough. On the next page, when option C, it says broadening the policy to include a perimeter of 10 metres around council buildings. So does that include the social housing that we also have?
No, that's intended to include our civic buildings, and the 10 metres would be in public space and doesn't encroach onto people's private property. So if their house is within 10 metres of a council building, they can still smoke there as well. So it's really intended to just be around our civic spaces rather than social housing.
Okay, so because that may well come up, and I suppose in relation to parks as well.
We can clarify that in the documentation.
Thank you. So the other question I have so comments have been made about how you can manage this and control this. One thing that seems missing from here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is about our ability to actually not allow vaping shops to be rented from buildings that KCDC owns. Is that included in here?
Yeah, so it's not specifically included in here. I guess that could be an internal policy that we choose or not choose to take on. The only thing that we do mention in here is around lease agreements. That is intended to be around the leases we have with like our cafes and things like that, but it could also be expanded to include any leases, but it's not currently the intention of it at this point. It's because it's mostly around, the focus of the policy is around where people smoke rather than where you can purchase or buy. So it's not quite, it doesn't quite line up with the intent of this particular policy.
I just want to note that, and I did mention the Public Health Service earlier, and I will again. Some of the difficulty in the space is, technically speaking, vaping is not illegal, and smoking is not illegal, and we're putting some boundaries around something that's actually legal. And so part of the challenge in this, and I guess our chair's comment about an additional recommendation to be tabled around advocacy, is that we are talking about restricting people's current rights to do something that is legal. And so it's that balancing point. So we would have to be careful about how we made some of those choices and decisions about excluding certain activities, because I'm not sure on the basis for which we would do that. Of course, we can put it in a policy, but it isn't something that anywhere else is currently proposing or promoting because of those legal difficulties.
So thank you for that. So I don't know if there's a policy for leasing out our buildings, and whether in there it has certain criteria that has to be met, and whether one of them actually is not is basically looking after people's health, for example.
Is this something we could take offline, Councillor Pravanov, as it's not specifically relevant to this
Well, I suppose
smoke-free policy going up for consultation?
So what I'm getting at is I'm just wondering whether or not something along those lines should be added in here, because if we're going out consulting on a matter like this here, and we potentially can still lease out properties to vape shops, that's, to me, that flies in the face of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure it's something we're going to come to a specific kind of resolution on today, but if we could take that offline before this, because I think also I've got delegation, potentially, if these recommendations are passed, to approve any minor changes. And so if there was a way to either connect this into some other work that could be done on that specific issue, or to kind of bridge that gap, I think it's worth looking into as to how it's referenced in this policy that goes out. So I can work with you on that, Councillor Pravanov, if that's okay. Cool, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Just quickly, in terms of being able to thread this into bylaws, etc., to Chris's point that it's legal, it's legal if you're over the age of 18, but it's not legal for people who are under 18. So there are a lot of areas of the law where it's legal for part of the population and not part of the other population. So I think that gives us quite a bit more leeway than you would have if something was, if people had an anti-ice cream thing, for instance, so that's legal for everybody. And this isn't. So, yeah, I think we've got room to have a more of an enforcement role. But I take your point.
Yeah, I do.
Thanks for the question.
I just want to note that the Public Health Service talked to us about the fact that from a health legislative position, the steps that some venues take to, I'll say, contain vaping products in a closed off space meets legislative requirements around people under the age of 18 not being able to view those products. So they are working within the scope in terms of current legislation. And so we asked them what opportunity there was to actually refine and improve that so that there is more ability to do things. Back to the point of advocacy, I think there's an opportunity to say that the current legislation is not covering off some of the things that need to be perhaps more directly stated, and that there's gaps. Because the challenge that we have is somebody could push back on the position that they are following the law. And then on what basis are we pursuing something? So it's for a wider conversation, but I'm just saying it's a challenging and technical zone, and the legislation, I think, is not as clear as it could be, and there's opportunity for us to give that feedback to central government, particularly as they are starting to change the legislation around these topics.
Kia ora, Chris. Councillor Coe.
I'm not sure whether this is the question or debate, but I just want to pick up on Councillor Provanov's point, and I think this is a good example of how values can be used with our strategies and so on. And I think our value here is that in all our activities that we undertake, we have the well-being of our community at the forefront. And I think perhaps that is a good way to deal with it. So it goes across everything that we do. Well-being is top of mind in everything we do. I think that probably would offer a solution to the problem.
Kia ora, thanks for that suggestion. Has the ability to kind of anchor all of these things in kind of a common collective value that can also sit at the governance level, but also across the organisation operationally in terms of the implementation of decisions. So I think that's a great suggestion. Yeah, awesome. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair, I have 5 questions. Great to see one's been addressed. I just picked up on it.
Awesome.
As such, so you might note that in the recommendations, A has been changed from what you've actually got in front of you. Simply around the way it was worded, pretty much was said that these things would be implemented straight away, rather than going out for consultation to get feedback on them, as such. So that small change here really covers quite a lot of the stuff that's that I was going to talk to be honest. So that clarifies that first question. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. That's out of the way now. I'm just wondering if it's reflected in the documentation as well. I look at numbers 61, 62, 63, 64. I think it's on page 76, which is the last page. The 61 talks to following adoption of the policy, the following places would become smoke-free vape tree across the district. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, no, that's so cool. My question is, what's the process for amending the policy after submissions? And what I mean by that is that we've got a policy here. We're going to go out to consult. It's going to come back to us. There's going to be certain aspects that Council Office will incorporate into the document. Is there a point where we get to add into that as well? I just reflect on PC2. That was there was a bit of a lack of understanding about that as a process. I'd just really like to get a clear indicator on what the process is with how we feed into that as well.
Sure thing. So yes, we go out to consult. We then have hearings where you will all collectively hear from submitters who have asked to be heard and hear what they have to say. Then we'll come back to you with a summary of submissions, so you can see collectively what the community has said. And following that, we provide you with some advice about how we're proposing to incorporate that into the new policy. And that's an opportunity for you guys, having heard all of the submissions and seen the summary of the written work and read through those yourselves, to see how that has been amended and if you want any kind of other changes to be made. So that's kind of the point at which we can have that conversation before it comes back through for final approval, if that's where we go.
Excellent. Okay.
Sorry, could I just note, Councillor Halliday, that essentially this process is more fluid than what we experienced with PC2 because it is not a centrally directed process. So you will have the opportunity to influence and amend the final product, just to be clear on that.
Yep, cool. That sort of dovetails a little bit onto the next one. What I generally get out of this document, it's about education and encouragement. Yet I note there's certain things that we've put down there that talks to requirement. Point in case A3 and A4 look to being a condition of lease. A4 talks to a smoke-free, vape-free requirement will be included in all council funding. Are we actually able to do that, considering it's not illegal? And this whole, what I'm hearing generally is that we're in the education space, an awareness space, because of the way the legislation is. I'm just concerned that we are maybe talking to things here that we're just unable to do.
I can respond to that one. So broadly speaking, this is an educational policy that is about helping to encourage our community to be smoke-free in a range of spaces. There are some very narrow areas where we do have a slightly stronger ability to do things, and that is when people are seeking to do those activities on property that we own. So we can, in a legal lease agreement, you can have you could add a condition in that says that if you're going to operate a hospitality business on our property, that it will be smoke-free even outside. And the same with the other example in here was around funding for events. So if people are seeking council funding for an event, we can place a condition on that funding to say that that event will be smoke-free and vape-free. So there are very few tools that we have available to us to be more directive than just educational in this space, but those are two where we do have specific abilities as the property owner or the funder to be able to put some additional conditions around people's activities.
I think that leans into Councillor Coe's earlier comment about our values-based decision-making going across what council is doing, and that we can justify taking that stance in respect to that.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. So, in other words, pretty much this is going to go for consultation. We'll wait to see what information comes back. All right, that's it for me for questions then, because I'm quite interested in what our community has to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Warwick.
I've just got one, number C. Agree to formally support government smoke-free goal. Did we not before, or do we just have to put that in every time we review it? Have we always supported
I don't think council has ever made a resolution to formally support that goal, so this is an opportunity, if that's what you would like to do, to formally support the smoke-free 2025 goal. It's not something that we have to regularly do, it's just something we've not done before.
And is there a reason why we haven't done it before? Doesn't tie us to anything?
No, it's just a general statement of support, I believe.
And this just seems like a good opportunity to do it because we've already got, this policy coming before us and having this conversation. So, cool. I'm not seeing any other questions. If there's someone who would like to move recommendations A, B, C, D, and E, if there's someone who would be happy to move all of those.
Happy to move it, Madam Chair.
Yep, moved by Councillor Halliday, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kirby. Right of introduction, Councillor Halliday.
Yes, Madam Chair. Look, as I noted when I was introducing the paper, to me, I think this is critical stuff. I do note that we're in the education space, but I do note that we put E down there simply so that we can have a pathway for advocating to central government in this space, because we are limited on what we can do as such. So that's about me on this. I think it's just fantastic we're addressing this, as Shelley pointed out. Is there any reasons why we haven't done this? It's all history. The thing is we're addressing it now. We're moving forward, and I do notice Simon's hands up as well.
Nice.
Sorry.
Yeah, no.
So I'm all happy with the way things are moving, and I look forward to seeing what comes back from the consultation process.
Great, thanks, Councillor Halliday. And when Councillor Halliday and I had the discussion about adding in recommendation E, we talked about being happy to draft a letter on behalf of the council table, and we could work with the mayor potentially in doing so, circulate that and get people's views, and then send that directly from us as a table. So that's something we're happy to work on and take advice from staff as to what's best for us to include in that, so it's as strong as possible. Next up, we've got Councillor Wilson, and then we'll come to you, Simon.
Yeah, we are in the education space. We've also been in the enabling space, having leased a vape store. So those drug dealers that were in that store have since moved, but their sign, we are still offering them free advertising for their vape and hookah services that they're offering. You'd pay quite good money for having that kind of signage up there. So I don't think we should be enabling that. I think that should be removed. It should have been removed when they were removed, but they've been relocated. So it's our building. It should be gone.
Yep. Cool. Thank you. Community Board Member Simon Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'd like to just endorse the sentiments, especially of Councillor Halliday. I think we need to make it more difficult for people to vape, give a clear stance and indication of where we sit as a council, including not having involvement in advertising or places where they can sell vaping. And also I agree that we actually need to put signage up because, even though we can't enforce it, I think we have to give a clear message, to the community that we actually don't endorse things. And also community have a social contract with each other. There's been in multiple occasions when I've seen, someone smoking in a place they shouldn't, and you say, hey, could we put that out? And it gives us as individuals a bit more empowerment as well to say, look, this is not right, and I don't want smoke in my space. So I completely endorse that we need policies, and I wouldn't like to see smoking or vaping in this country at all at some stage. So yeah, that's all I have to say, really. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Simon. Glenn, Community Board Member Glenn Elson.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just a few points I just want to make on this, and mainly around the vaping, or completely around the vaping, because I think it's really important that we do get this in here. One thing I want to say is, because I do have 3 young children between the ages of 4 and 8, and I spend a lot of time in our public places and parks, what I have noticed and over the last few months is how upsetting it is for our children to have people vaping in these parks, and really stressful for them and really upsetting. And, to the point I've seen children crying because people are vaping, and they're at school told not how bad it is. And then, the people going to their playgrounds where the children are and vaping around them. And it really is upsetting for, a 6-year-old and stuff like that, So I think that's really important for that. Another one is on 19 in report, I see there's a point made that vaping was introduced to as a stop smoking aid. That's actually an untruth. That was never why vaping was done. And how I know this is, in 2005 I lived in Switzerland, and I had 2 major customers. I had a lot of customers, but 2 major customers I had. One was Philip Morris, and the other one was JTI, Japan Tobacco International. And back in that time, these companies realised that they were in trouble and they needed to do something. And they were looking at that stage, they were spending millions and millions and millions in developing a product that they could continue selling, knowing that smoking was going to be banned everywhere and where it was going. So back in those days, they were looking and developing a product to continue their revenue streams after normal smoking was done. And they actually had a competition there. I remember Philip Morris had a competition with their development teams over who would be the first ones to come up with a product that they could do which wouldn't have the smoke, the smoke-free product. It was amazing. So, there's a bit of propaganda which has come out, and it was exactly the way, the tobacco companies wanted it to be seen as a smoking, stop smoking product, but it is never about that. It has always been around, how they could continue with their revenue. And, I had a lot of people who worked with Philip Morris as well, who worked with them, who were my friends, and, and they were both my customers, so I really do understand where this product came from. And in fact, I was a heavy smoker myself back then, and I actually tested some of these products which didn't even end up in market. So yeah, that one. The third point I want to make is also vaping. What the other issue with the vaping is the crime that comes behind it. And there's 2 parts of it. One is vaping stores have now become a big target for crime. We see the smash and grabs happening with these, so it's, there. But it's not only that, our kids, our teenagers and everyone else, they need money to be able to buy these. So, just like drugs and alcohol, they are committing crime to be able to get money to buy these products. So I think for all of these reasons, for me, getting vaping out is really important, and this here. And the other thing, as I said, is we're discussing this, and if this is approved to go through the consultation, then from the Paraparam Community Board, we will be discussing putting in a submission as well from from that side as well.
Kia ora, thank you, Glenn. I think staff have a response to just one thing that you mentioned.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. I'm just responding to that intent around why vaping was introduced. Thank you for that point. That's really helpful. We, in consultation with Regional Public Health, is where this information has come from. But I think it's possibly slightly poorly worded in that it's one of the issues has been that vaping has been endorsed as part of that smoke-free message. So the intention was kind of to say that's how we've got to where we are, rather than, as you pointed out, it's not actually why vaping was introduced. It's just become endorsed as part of a smoke-free message that's been problematic. So thank you.
I'll take it one step further and say that the Regional Public Health Service, the Public Health Service, has said to us, as part of the government's ambition to be smoke-free by 2025, I feel like they're going further than endorsing vaping. They're encouraging vaping so that people don't smoke, so that we achieve a zero, New Zealand free smoking environment. And we've had that conversation with our colleagues from respective health services.
Deputy Mayor Lawrence Kirby.
I'm really excited to support this going out to consultation, and I endorse what Community Board Member Glenn Olsen said around supporting our schools and the work that they're doing in education space. For us as council to also be communicating a similar message, I think is really important to the hard work that our teachers are doing in that space. And it has already been mentioned by Councillor Halliday about the struggle that our colleges in particular are having with vaping, and the challenges around use of bathrooms and all of that kind of thing. For us to be sending messages that are similar to what our education places are saying, I think is very important. And so this is an exciting piece of work. I don't think it goes far enough, but part of it is because our central government hasn't gone far enough yet in regards to their work in this space, and I don't think we have enough of the research that we need to have to support vaping as being actually terrible for our health. So there's a couple of things that I fully endorse the addition of E into there of strongly advocating to central government as well. So thank you.
Kia ora, thank you for those comments. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I'd also like to endorse the sentiment of the room. I've got a 16-year-old, and I showed her these stats around 18% or whatever it was, the 20% of, and she laughed in my face. She said 80%. All her peer group, she's got a wide group of friends. In fact, she has tried vaping herself. She's not a vapor. Went down like a lead brick at home, but anyway. She's talking 80% plus of her friends are regularly vaping. And the more we can do to support that not happening, the better. So I would request when we do signage that we put some, I'm happy to spend money on signage. You know me, I don't like spending money, but it would be good for good signage. And if anyone has watched the Oxycontin documentary on Netflix called Poison, you will see the insidiousness of Big Pharma influencing government policy. It's worth watch. It's heartbreaking. You know, I think we're seeing this with our vaping epidemic. So, yeah, the more we can do the space, the better.
100% agree, and I think there's a lot of peer pressure out there as well. And once, you know, if a young person tries it or anyone tries it and they're into it, then it's a slippery slope. And so that addiction is very real, and that's one of the reasons why we included that in recommendation E as well. Councillor Warwick.
So I just want to touch on what Chris just said before about the smoke-free goal, well, number C, in formally supporting the smoke-free goal, I'm not sure what that says about vaping, because if we're formally supporting something that then supports vaping as a means to get off smoking, does it? No, is that?
Could I say something related to that?
Yep,
Yeah.
We'll pass to Mihopa.
So, two things about that. First of all, today we're meant to be endorsing something to go out for consultation. Instead, we're having a wide-ranging discussion with a whole lot of information without background or research or information behind it. Also, during debate time, that's for us as councillors to have a discussion around the recommendations and decide whether we support them or not. Question time is kind of over. So really what we need to be doing now is looking at the recommendations in front of us, and either supporting them or not. And those recommendations are around going out to consultation. So there's still a lot of time to have a discussion around some of the detail around this.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And I think because the question was asked too, maybe it's something that we can kind of follow up on how we make clearer through the consultation as well as to what, New Zealand's smoke-free 2025 goal is, and then how also we are putting pressure on central government to take vaping really seriously, and treating it as a real threat within that and not seeing it as something that so we can probably maybe strongly word the advocacy role that we're hoping to play in that space as well. But yeah, thank you. Are there any other comments about the recommendations? Kim?
Kia ora. Yes, I endorse the recommendations, largely because there's a high percentage of Māori that are smoking or vaping, and now there's a high percentage of Māori children that are now smoking or vaping, so that makes it worse. I like the fact that the paper talks about education, because I think there's an underlying reason why people are doing these things. But I do think we have to take a two-pronged approach where we have to restrict and educate. And as to the recommendations around not allowing vaping at parks, I've seen this happening regardless of any recommendations. Like when I've been at school events, people are, organisers saying it's smoke-free and vape-free, even without these kinds of things in place. So the community is already doing this kind of stuff, and we're actually just supporting what they're already doing. So I totally, endorse all the recommendations.
Kia ora, thank you, Kim. So our recommendations on page 42 have been moved and seconded. Did you want a quick right of reply, Councillor Halliday?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's just been talked to me whether we would consider moving through the recommendations one by one. Is that a possibility at all? There's some concern around agree to formally support government smoke-free ad here 2025 goal. I do wonder if that could perhaps be looked at being amended, perhaps, with regards to talking to supporting the smoke-free goal, but ensuring that's worded in such a way that we are not endorsing vaping as such.
They have actually been moved and seconded as a whole.
Cool.
So, yeah, but
I'm happy with that.
Did you want to?
I'm happy with that because that can come back via our submission process, which with regards
we can put that in our strongly worded letter
as an issue.
Thanks, Councillor Halliday.
It was good to be able to voice that and just touch on it because it's a valid point. It's a very valid point. I guess my right of reply is just great to see the table generally, not generally, 100% supporting where we're heading in this direction. Look, government's got to change their mind. Vaping's not a pathway for reducing smoking. It's turned into a gateway to cigarette smoking, which is quite ironic considering the recent referendum around cannabis with regards to, it was an argument used that it was a gateway. In fact, quite frankly, I think that would have been used as a gateway back in the other direction to bring people off smoking and vaping. But that's a whole different conversation as such. So, looking forward to this going out, and look forward to seeing what the comments are that come back, and us being able to put a piece of work around this that's strong, very, very strong.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor Halliday, and just echoing the thanks of Councillor Halliday to the staff for all of the work that's gone into the policy in its current form, and looking forward to hearing from the community and hopefully a diverse cross-section of the community too. I really hope that we hear from a diversity of ages and ethnicities and perspectives and lived experience through this consultation, and I think it'll be important that we quite intentionally go to where people are to hear from them, because this is quite a far-reaching and important issue. So, cool. All those in favour? Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you, Ange. Oh, yep, staying here. Cool. And Leslie as well. Awesome. So we're moving on to item 8.3, draft class 4 gambling and TAB venue gambling policy. Again, this is just another approval to consult. So if we can try and be quite succinct in our question asking and also in our debate. And I want to note too that we have had a workshop on this. You might remember when we had kind of a very much workshop style arrangement in the room and we went around the different tables, we were able to put questions and comments to the fore on this specific issue around Class 4 gambling and TAB venue gambling. So I'll pass over to the team for any introductory comments and then we'll go to questions.
Kia ora koutou. I'm introducing the draft Class 4 gambling and TAB venue gambling policy and statement proposal today for approval to consult with the public using the special consultative procedure. And we're looking to do this alongside the smoke-free public places policy starting next Wednesday, 30th of August through to the 2nd of October. Through the policy options analysis and the discussions with councillors that we had at the briefing, the recommended approach we are taking with the draft policy is a sinking lid approach, which differs to our current caps-based approach. So taking the paper as read and happy to take any questions.
Kia ora, thank you, Leslie. Any questions? Councillor Coe.
Yeah, can I just clarify the sinking lid approach? Like, does that mean we are tracking to zero, or is there a threshold that we're tracking to?
No, that effectively means we are tracking to zero, but the only way that can happen is through venue closures or losing the licences. So we don't have any power to make places close. So it's it would be a very long process tracking that way, but it's a new approach to kind of head in that direction.
Right. Okay. So but we can also review this policy, I guess, going forward. So if it was getting too close to zero, where we're getting negative feedback, presumably you could retract the sinking lid policy.
Yeah, so under the Gambling Act, we have to review this policy every 3 years.
Right.
So so it will continue to be reviewed every 3 years, and we'll be able to see what impact that the previous policy approach has had on different stakeholders.
And I just want to note, with the intent to lean into the comments that the Chair had made earlier, I think we are proposing to go out to consultation in this draft with the sinking lid approach. And so we're seeking feedback from our community on that, and that will obviously come back to you for further discussion. So we're not signing up to that today. We are obviously just saying that's the option that we think should go out to the community, just to be clear on that point.
Thank you, and leaning into that as well, if questions could be kind of directly relevant to that and what we're putting up for consultation, and hearing feedback from the community on would be great. Councillor Halliday.
Yeah, through Madam Chair, just noting recommendations point A, notes preferred policy for consultation is option C. We're just noting that, is that right? All three options are part of the consultation document. We're going to get feedback on them. And then that's the officer's preferred option, which we will take into consideration after the lovely, thank you very much.
Correct, yeah. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, excellent paper, 100% support this, but I know a matter very dear to Councillor Warwick's heart. There's no mention of the casino in here, and I was just wondering if we're going to be consulting on
Slightly
that.
irrelevant to the discussion.
I'm just wondering if we're going to consult on it.
Okay, moving right along. Councillor Cooper.
Just a question in case, or just a question. So if we take is it tied to the liquor licence, or is there a specific licence held with DIA for the pokies?
Yeah, so it's not related to the liquor licence, but currently all our the Class 4 gambling venues are in facilities that have liquor licences, because Class 4 gambling cannot be the primary purpose of that venue. So that's why they're generally linked to pubs. The licence for the Class 4 gambling does go through the DIA, but they have to get consent from council first before they get the licence.
Yep. So our pub here that's closed next to the police station, if that reopens and they've got pokies in there, can that reopen with the pokies on the licence when it closed, or no? How does that work?
Yeah. So there's the refinery, wasn't it? But next to that is the Black Stag. They're actually separate. So the Black Stag currently operate with their pokies still. Yeah. So.
Oh, the refinery didn't have pokies, so they couldn't apply for pokies.
No.
Okay, thanks. Cheers.
Kia Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I'm not seeing any other questions. So is there someone who would like to move the recommendations on page 77? Councillor Warwick? Yeah, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Right of introduction, Councillor Warwick. Is there anything you wanted to say?
No.
No?
No.
Any debate from the table? No.
Yes.
Ah, Councillor Coe.
I have a big problem here. Yeah, I've got a big gambling problem. No, look. Look, I do a lot of work in the philanthropic sector, and this aspect has been glossed over in my view. It is really, really hard to get grants from charitable organisations, and the pokies are a major source of this. You know, I've been on the other side of the fence here, you know, with organisations applying to the likes of the, you know, the Pokey Trust, what have you, to get funding. This will have a major impact, particularly on some of our sporting organisations in Kapiti, and I would like to see reference in here rather than, I was trying to find it just now, there's a comment somewhere along the lines of, oh, well, all these organisations who are depending on the handouts can just go and find money from elsewhere. That is a lot easier said than done, and I really think if we're going to implement this, we need to say something positive in here, that we will work with organisations to try and develop a different source of charitable funding for Kapiti here. As you know, I'm heavily involved with the Nico Foundation, which is Wellington's community foundation. We have the Nico Kapiti Committee. There is a lot that council could do to promote the development of a community fund that is not based on the proceeds of gambling, but which can provide a steady stream of income for our charitable organisations here. We are underserved in this community by you know, organisations that give grants in our local community. And I would like to see a really positive statement here, because I know that charities will be reading this policy and thinking, oh, cripes, there goes our, you know, source of funding for the next few years. What the hell are we going to do? And there will be some concern around that. Can we please in there say something about, you know, how we will work with these organisations? I mean, even, you know, like we had, I'm not sure whether she's still here, Tonya Jones,
Yeah, she's still here.
making someone available to work with these organisations to find alternative sources of funding, but not only that, but also, as I say, to support those charities that are trying to build up a fund for, you know, to make charitable donations here. That's because that's the flip side of it, you know, and it's a really important side for our community.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, Liz. And I wonder, with recommendation D, authority delegated to the chief executive to approve any minor and technical changes required to the consultation document, whether, you know, you could potentially work with the relevant staff and the CE to draft something to be included. How would you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Cool. That'll be a follow-up. Thank you, Councillor Coe. Anything else you wanted to say?
No, that's
Cool.
it for me. Thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair. And now that we've gone past question answering time, because Councillor Coe makes some very, very, very good points there. Look, I remember coming along to the hearings, I think last time, you know, and it's very well represented by the gaming community and that sort of stuff. And I'm picking that in the last 3 years, there actually hasn't been that much change with regards to how many machines and that sort of stuff there are in the district. And I dare say that will be fairly ongoing, for the simple reason that a lot of these places that do sell, that's part of their selling proposition and that sort of stuff. So although the sinking that is there, it'll clean up opportunity that's there, but I don't think it's going to make a hell of an impact. And to be honest, that's what the paper says there as well. But I take on board what you're saying, Councillor Coe, and we've got the review coming up around the Social Investment Fund, I think, shortly. That might be somewhere to have that conversation, perhaps, on how we are approaching funding for that community as such, and how we can assist and help them and partner with them as well, because that was a big issue. I remember when the Social Investment Fund was first put in place, was some of our key groups losing what was they considered guaranteed funding, and that ties into Councillor Wilson's requests around the Citizens Advice Bureau, etc., like that, to be looked at with regards to funding. But I do think there's definitely a space for us to consider how we're going to be supporting our community in that space in an ongoing manner, and that sort of stuff. So again, this was going up for consultation. Look forward to seeing what the community has to say coming back, and happy to be endorsing it as we move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. And yeah, just a reminder to those around the table that were in debate. So yeah, there won't be questions being asked or answered. Councillor Kirby, Deputy Mayor Kirby.
So I'd like to follow on with the endorsing. I think there are some questions to be asked about funding and the tension that exists in this space around funding from gambling, which has a social harm aspect that also goes back into community organisations that are trying to address social harm. So there's a bit of a roundabout go round there that, which is more important. The other thing I just wanted to comment on, what concerns me is the percentage of money that is taken from our community through these machines that then doesn't get returned. I think the figure was around 43% only of the money that is taken from our community that then comes back into our community, which says there's another 50 or 40 odd percent that isn't returned back to us after you take the profits and all those kinds of things which organisations need to take. That, I think, is also a concern that needs to be highlighted, and I don't know how we address that through this process, but that would be something that I would like also for us to consider through the process of where we come to a point of approving a policy, that we're looking at how we encourage these organisations to reinvest closer to 100% of what they earn here back into our community.
Great point. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mayor Holborough.
Yeah, just very briefly, I endorse what Councillor Coe said. It's a weird model for funding community groups, but also sporting organisations. It's not just community groups. I think it's over half of the money actually goes back to sports organisations. So I'm wondering if it's a conversation that needs to be had with Sport New Zealand, who identify where the money comes from on the front page of their website, which I've just looked at, but don't make any, they never make any comment about the appropriateness or not of gambling money going back into sport. So yeah, definitely something that needs to be looked at. But I'll be supporting this today because we can't just keep going the way we've been going.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just we've seen both sides of that, the sort of the moral imperatives around this, and it's true that there are recipient organisations of this funding, and it's equally true that there is a great deal of social harm that's caused. It's also worth noting that the substantial portion of income from these machines comes from the poorest areas, and it's not redistributed back into those poorer areas. It's also worth noting that there's a disproportionate amount of the funds go back out to sports groups, and sports groups in particular who the consumption of alcohol is a big part of what they do. So rugby clubs, for instance, have always done very well out of poker machines, and I'm not sure how many potters and painters and poets have been supported through this. So the arts haven't featured very well. So I think there's a danger if we get too prescriptive. When the chair was talking about what amendment you might make to D, is the danger of being too prescriptive about saying, emphasising the importance of the money that comes back without having the other side of that argument and saying, well, actually only 43% of it's coming back, the other 57% is disappearing down a rabbit hole. So that, I think, is a danger. I would just rather leave that's actually a point of debate. It'll be a point of debate in the community. I think there's a danger if council itself looks like it's taking a prescriptive view, because my prescriptive view would be just get rid of all of them, right? And then properly fund those organisations that need to be properly funded. But that's a really live argument, because I'm not in that position with purse strings, right? So that's my caution is just, we've just heard Lawrence and we've heard Liz, and that's a very live debate and it will be out in the community. I think we should just say, here's a stage to have that debate. That's all. Yep.
Yeah, kia ora, good point. And that just reinforces the fact that this is only us going out to consultation to have this kōrero. So, yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilson. Kim, over to you.
Kia ora, yeah, I took all this going out to consultation, largely because Māori have a high representation in this again. And as Councillor Wilson just said, you know, the people that are putting the money into these pokies aren't the one that are benefiting from where those pokies are going, if we take that as a percentage. So obviously the harm is outweighing the potential good right now, and so we need to address that. I'm also noting that council officers have tried to contact us in particular. We are very, very interested. We've actually done studies on this ourselves, and in terms of Otaki specific studies, and so we have someone who is very, very keen to have input into that, so I look forward to that. Yeah, it's just not wanting to be involved, it's just lack of time. Yeah, so I'm very happy to see this go out because it is causing, and again, it's an education thing, because why are people doing this? Why are they vaping and gambling? It's more than just a social thing to do for some people. It's actually a way they get away from their life. You know, it's a way they help themselves stay sane. So for some people, it's a need. And why is that a need? And if we can create a culture where that is not a need, and you know, be socially sustainable where these things aren't a need, that would probably be where we need to focus attention. But yeah, so very keen to have this discussion.
Kia ora, Kim, thank you. And last contribution to debate, Councillor Spires.
Thank you, and I'm going to be speaking in the opposition really, but it's just that I have a cousin who lives locally in her 80s, and her friends in the same age group go out every Friday afternoon and play the pokies. Now, they enjoy it because they socialise it and they have a whole heap of fun. So it's just that some people out there can use the pokies and have a really, really, really good time and not have a, you know, issue with it. So I just wanted to throw that in and say that not everybody who uses the pokies has a gambling problem.
Yeah, Chris just said that is referred to in the paper as well. So thank you for giving voice to that too, Councillor Spires. Right of reply, Councillor Warwick.
Only to say that in the paper also is the fact that people will gamble even if the machines aren't there, and I know from having young people, they gamble online. And so, yeah, we're not opting to go for nothing, but we do have to be a bit careful, because if we take away all that ability for people to be in a space that is social to gamble, they're going to do it anyway. But I'm not sure how this is beyond this, but how do we put pressure on these owners of the machines to come back into our community and do education, because that's where it needs to be. There's education to our kids and stuff about gambling. So I'm not sure how we do that, but
yeah, part of our health strategy discussion as well will be woven through that kind of that public health education, and people's involvement in things like gambling could well be something that we try and address through that, and also through putting some strongly worded advocacy to those who, as you say, kind of do hold the levers also in that space. And true, have influence over that money, 100%. And that seems like it's been quite a theme of the conversation today. So good to have that aired and out in the conversation to see now where the public consultation will lead us, and then what we will hear back from our communities. So recommendations on page 77, they've been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Cool, that's carried. Thank you to the team for all your work. And as goes with both of the kind of two policies that we've just talked on, any ways that we can support with the consultation in terms of spreading the word, just let us know, send the links to us and we'll pass them along and try and get as many people as possible involved. Thank you. Cool. So now we've got item 8.4, which I will pass the chair over to Councillor Coe for. I might just leave my bag.
Oh, I'm in the power seat. Watch out, everybody. All right, item 8.4, Climate Action Grant Summary of Applications and Recommendations. Now, before we commence this, I just would like to point out, which you should already be aware anyway, that this matter has been before the Climate and Environment Subcommittee. And just a reminder, the reason we have subcommittees is because they do kind of the grunt work to make our life easier when we get to this point. So I'm not expecting to have a long discussion around this topic for that very reason. I would, and also because it's come from the subcommittee, I would actually like to lead off with Councillor Pravanov as the chair of that subcommittee to set the scene. I know we have staff here as well, but I think the key point here is that there were some changes made at the subcommittee level to the report that came in from staff. So, Councillor Pravanov, would you like to just set the scene for this, and then we will hand over to staff to comment as well?
Thank you, Councillor Coe. So as you'll see, starting on page 134.
She'll move it. Yes, I know she'll move it.
Yes.
But I'd like her to introduce it as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so starting on page 134, we have these recommendations laid out in front of us. So this is actually a new grant that has been funded by DIA, and this is the first year that it's going to be funded. There's one more year after that. You'll see that there are 16 applications, totally oversubscribed. $240,000 was requested for $100,000 that there was available to be allocated. When the paper came to us, there was, I think, about $19,000 that wasn't allocated, but the subcommittee decided that it was appropriate to allocate all those funds. It was actually, we had a very, very robust set of conversations and debates on the matter, and so we've landed where I think it was unanimous where we landed. I think it's fair to say that being a new grant, there's probably some learnings that could be applied to it going forward. But I think at the end of the day, there is a real need out there for this type of grant to be distributed into our community. One thing that I note is that both in the application forms and in our policy, that it's not actually that tight on the reporting requirements back to this meeting or to the subcommittee. And I just want to foreshadow that I'd actually like to make a slight amendment to one of the motions in recommendations that are before us. So at this point in time, I think this is the correct way of doing it. I can now move.
Did you have questions from?
Yes, actually no. Hold on. So do we actually hear from what council staff wish to state first before we move it? Yes. Okay. Yep. So thank you for that introduction.
And we'll have some,
Thank you. Thank you.
Rob, are you speaking to us? Thank you.
Tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora, good morning everybody. Just to provide a little bit of further context to Councillor Pravanov's comments, because there was maybe some confusion when CES talked, a little bit of background context. Some opportunities for emission reductions are obvious. Switching from cars to bikes to buses, electrifying energy production, making our buildings and industries more energy efficient. What may be less obvious, because emissions are somewhat hidden within the supply chains of everyday objects, is the need for a reduction in the general consumption of all stuff. So alongside this is a wider cultural impact or social influence of any given action. So, for example, funding a replacement air compressor for the men's shed may have a negligible effect in terms of direct emissions reductions, but the broader impact that this enables, helping to repair hundreds of items across a wide range of groups within our communities, reducing the need for these items to be replaced by new ones, helping to create a mindset of reuse and repair, and facilitating community connection and collaboration, made this project worthy of funding in the view of council officers. And the same extended thinking could be applied to other applications as well. And as you will have seen, is reflected in the grant objectives and assessment criteria. So as Councillor Pravanov neatly summarised, a lot of really excellent applications. If there was some way that we could further support community and business-led action on climate and environment, potentially it's money quite well spent.
Right, thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the way, anyway. So just a question about how this is going to happen. Will there be the opportunity to comment on individual applications, or is this going to be we're voting for this whole thing or not?
I'm not sure that we want to get into the level of individual application. I just want to remind you that this has been through the subcommittee and was extensively debated at that level, and I don't believe this is a forum to get to that level of detail.
One wasn't sufficiently debated and didn't consider a recommendation that was made from our community board, but I won't argue your process.
I think if you have a concern with something that has been mishandled at the subcommittee, it would be useful to table that if you'd like to put that forward for consideration.
Sure. Yeah, I do have comment to make about one of the applications, but if I don't have that opportunity, then it's closed. That's the way it is.
And we'll cover that in debate. Yep. All right.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Oh, yeah.
With regards to some of the changes and recommendations that were made as part of the paper, I was just wondering, there was one there that I noted, which was the Cycle Action Group, and I was just wondering, I appreciate the spending of the full $100,000, which council officers had recommended not spending the full amount. I'd like to see the money go out to the community. I was just wondering, what was the reasoning behind the full funding support of that group, whether there was some comment from the committee as such around that decision?
Would Rob like to answer that, or Jocelyn?
Well, maybe I could just give a staff response, and maybe the chair might want to add to that. So yeah, so the original recommendation in the paper was not to support the Company Cycle Action proposal, and that was, I guess, the same basis for that. That recommendation was the one that was the advice that was provided to the chair of the Ramity Community Board, where that application was provided in the first instance as well. And the recommendation was that it should go through the long-term plan process and be supported by staff and implemented through that. And there was a discussion at the committee meeting around timing, and the applicants put forward their case as to why they felt it should be considered, and the committee changed that recommendation to go ahead with the proposal and provide the funding. So some of the background around that in terms of the support that could be provided through the long-term plan, that was really the basis for the recommendation from staff, was that we felt we could do more in that space if it was incorporated into the long-term plan. But again, maybe the chair might want to comment on the decision on the day that was to progress it in advance of the LTP, basically.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the chair. So thank you for your comments, Sean. So I think it's fair to say, as I mentioned earlier on, there's some learnings that probably can be taken from this. Is that it's my understanding that obviously the applications came in. It's my understanding that the applicants they specifically weren't invited to attend the meeting on the day. 2 applicants did, and they happened to be 2 that actually got funding on the day. I think also too there were some questions raised around whether or not a large for this Kapiti cycling work, whether or not a large amount of money should be spent going to a consultant for this work, and certainly this work has been. I think the community board had actually identified where it sat within their realm, and that the recommendation was that it went through the long-term plan. But on the day, the majority was that it went, that all the money was to be allocated, and that it was going to be allocated to those other 2 groups. Other than that, there's probably not a lot more to say.
Thank you. Councillor Halliday.
I guess in response to that, thank you for that. Mr. Mellon, you're talking about the ongoing support. Would I assume that would still be coming as part of the process, more perhaps in a staff support rather than a financial support way, or something along that sort of line?
Well, no. I mean, it would now be back to the council as to whether they would like to do more through the long-term plan. But in terms of the proposal as it stands at the moment, staff weren't consulted with as part of the proposal, and I guess one of the other issues in terms of resource is it wouldn't be something that we could resource support for now. It would be solely at the with this Kapiti Cycling Action Group to do their work and implement it, and then I think there's a report back as part of that. But
thank you very much for the clarity.
Councillor Cooper.
Just clarifying what Jocelyn said. It wasn't unanimous. I think I voted against the split between the Kapiti Cycling Group and another applicant. So just a point. Yeah, that's right. That's just a point of clarity.
Thank you.
I
All right.
voted against.
Thank you. So no more questions. Councillor Pravanov, would you like to move?
Sorry, just question from me.
Oh, sorry, beg your
Sorry,
pardon.
just again, just point about the process.
Yeah.
I got the message that now wasn't time to discuss it, but people have just been discussing it. So I just want to make sure that my voice comes in at the right point. Should I say something now or wait?
No, wait till we've moved.
Okay. Yep.
And
cool.
then you can.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was just listening to everybody discussing it, and
It's not a question. No, it's a comment. Oh, he wants to make a point. Yep. Any other questions? No. Councillor Pravanov, would you like to move the recommendations?
Thank you, through the chair. So before I do this, I've obviously foreshadowed an amendment. So do I just move the recommendations that are in the paper at this point in time, or both?
No. Yeah, we need the. Hang on.
So I've sent the amendment through.
Oh, yeah. So you will do the amendment now.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So there we are.
What would you like to propose? Yeah. So what is the amendment?
So it's in grey in B. So just basically
So could you just
ensuring
talk to
the
that?
yeah. So in terms of both the criteria for the application and in our policy, it's actually not specific in terms of when reporting back is required, or if it's specifically
By the grantees, you mean?
Yes, correct.
Yep.
And so I'm actually just making that clearer, that there's a requirement that they must do that before the second year's funding is allocated, so that we can learn from, I suppose, how the process has gone over this current year to ensure that going forward that, we might want to, to rejig some things.
I would have thought that's part of the criteria of the grants?
The criteria, I've actually written it down here.
Or the requirements of the grants that they report back?
It's got here, success must be quantifiable and be able to be reported back to council. As I said, there's no time frame associated with that.
Could staff please clarify, is there a reporting requirement currently within a certain time frame?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the question. Opportunity to clarify. So for all successful applicants, there is both interim reporting and final reporting. The final
That's
reporting
required.
that is required. The final reporting takes the shape of an online report, and through the new Smarty Grants platform, that looks pretty consistent across applications. The interim reporting, there's a bit more flexibility there and an opportunity for the nature of that to suit applications. So, for example, that could look like a site visit for myself, see how the project's going, can they send us some photos of the project and things in action that we can use within our own publicity material. So interim reporting, some flexibility to make it less onerous for the applicant, but end of project final reporting is a mandatory requirement for all projects.
So thank you for that clarification. But as I said, when I looked at the criteria and the policy and the application form, there's actually nothing written there. So I'm not sure where that's actually written. What document is that written in?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't actually have the application in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that it's within the online application criteria that it says towards the end a note there about final reporting.
With respect, I did actually check earlier on and I could not see it. So if you want to, if you're able to find it, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, okay. All right, so can we, I've just had a suggestion that we put this motion forward with a seconder and we debate the motion as it's put currently. Thank you. All right, seconded by Mayor Janet.
We need a second. Oh, we've got a seconder. Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes, we are all individuals.
Right.
It's just moved and seconded by
all of the what? What are you talking about? All the recommendations?
So
or
you're just going to, they're moved and seconded by
yes,
Councillor Trevano and seconded by Mayor Janet at Holborough, but you're putting each individual one to the vote.
Each
So
recommend,
you're
each
saying
A.
we're putting A
All right,
to the vote,
okay.
putting B to the vote. Is that right?
Yep, all right. Okay, I think we'll take these recommendations one by one. I've just had it pointed out to me by staff that there may be some change to things going forward, which might mean that the Climate Environment Subcommittee is not necessarily the right body for the reports to go back to. So does staff wish to? Well, we'll come to that when we come to that recommendation. Let's start with A. Oh, debate. Right. Okay, debate. Yep.
Well, you put it to the vote to each single one, but you can debate.
All right. We'll open it up for the debate across all recommendations, and then we'll put it to the vote one by one. So, opening up for debate, Community Board Member Larissy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to clarify, this is my moment to comment on a specific application?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Right. So thank you.
Go for it.
So yeah, I do have concerns about a specific application that has been recommended to be funded, the Kapiti Cycling Action one. Now, first of all, I think it's really important to say that this is a fantastic idea, and our community board is totally 100% behind it. We funded it partially through our committee, or through our board. We provided them with $2,500 to help them get started. We also made a recommendation that the idea gets funded through the long-term plan. That recommendation was made with staff on the night who generously offered to support it through the long-term plan. The benefit of doing it that way is that it has staff oversight the whole way through its life. Staff can pick up some of that work that would otherwise be carried out through funding. Funding that is currently on the table being offered to the idea could then be used for a different climate changing idea, but this idea still go ahead. There's uncertainties about this plan. There's health and safety issues that haven't really been discussed. Health and safety is mentioned in the letter from SmartSense, the company who'd be carrying out the work, but all it really says is that SmartSense would carry the public liability for any issues. But I think there's actually a bigger health and safety conversation that needs to happen there that isn't clear. It heavily relies on volunteers, and people always say they're happy to help, but will they? So that's yet to be tested. It also means funding the idea up front, which if it doesn't go ahead because of these multiple complications, that money's gone and can no longer help other climate change ideas that could happen. So I think potentially the community could be worse off by funding the idea at this stage. Okay? I think the community could be better off, generally, if the funding was applied to another group and council staff help support it through the long-term plan. Now, the concern is, but we don't know if it'll get it across the line for the long-term plan. Well, that's in your hands too, through the council table. So the people at this table who make decisions still have the opportunity to make sure that this idea comes to life. So we're happy to help push it through into the long-term plan, support it, advocate it for it, absolutely. Senior staff are happy to support it in council where it's probably best sits rather than outside of council. So on that basis, and probably other reasons that I'm sure our friend Sean Mellon can come up with, I would like to suggest to the members of this committee that that application is not funded through this grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warwick.
I was at that meeting, and I think the intention behind funding it, in my mind, was to get it up and going so that there was a degree of success or something that we could look to in the long-term plan to be able to say, yes, we want to progress with this, or we don't because it's not working. And so that, I think that was, to me, the intent behind it was to give it some momentum to lead into the long-term plan. So we had some facts to produce, or the Cycling Action Group had facts to produce to say, yes, this is good, because then maybe it can be funded more to go around the district rather than just in one area. And yes, that was the hope, I think, in my mind, was that there would be some facts on the table for us to look at to say, hey, this is a really good initiative. Can we do it across the district? So the intent was to give it some momentum for me.
Thank you. Mayor Holborough.
Thank you very much. So if there's any doubt about the process that we're going through and the appropriateness of the Climate and Environment Subcommittee to make recommendations about grants, I pulled up the governance structure, and there are two bullet points that refer to grants. The first being authority to provide oversight for grant funding, including the opportunity to review and comment on draft grant criteria, which might cover off some of the chair's concerns around the learnings from this process. There could be some review through that committee on this process. And then the second, authority to make recommendations to the Strategy, Operations and Finance Committee with regards to decisions about grant approvals, which is what we're doing today, considering their recommendations. We're not bound by them. If we decide that we agree with the chair of the Raumati Community Board and we don't want to fund the Cycling Action Network grant, that's perfectly within our responsibilities to do so. I, for one, think that the Climate and Grants Committee seem to have gone through quite a robust discussion and process as regards these grants. So I'm of a mind to honour their recommendations today and agree with them. In terms of whether to fund the Cycling Action Network through this grant or through the long-term plan, there's no reason why there can't be a bit of both. They don't have to spend this money tomorrow. They don't have to start on Monday. We could always even decide to grant them an extension through a special recommendation at the Climate Committee or this committee. I'm not sure where that would go. But what this does is it locks in that we think that this is an important climate initiative. And I think that's what the subcommittee decided. If it goes to the long-term plan, it's suddenly up against everything else in the organisation in what's going to be a highly competitive funding process, as we heard in our workshop last week. So I think that the subcommittee came to a good decision around that in deciding that this was something that A, is appropriate to this area of work, and B, something that they want them to get on and do now, to at least make a start. There's a certain amount of work that can be done without council support, for instance, and that has been going on already. So yeah, I'm supporting these recommendations today. It's a bit weird to be supporting them all. I mean, I guess during debate you could say, okay, I'm going to support A and not B, C, and D, but yeah. No, I support all of these today. In terms of the amendment that was made before this was moved and seconded today, I'm a tiny bit concerned that might mean that the report back has to happen before the year's finished, which might constrain the applicants in terms of time.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
But I'm sure we can sort that out as we go along.
Debate first. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Community Board Member Simon Black, will go to you next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I would like to endorse the comments of supporting this projects. I was the person who seconded the motion to actually allocate the unallocated funds, because I want to see these go to projects right now rather than hold things over. They are projects which are going to support indirectly our emission reduction goals, and I'd rather to see them put in action right now. Specifically with the Cycle Action project, I recall from that meeting that time was of the essence. They had lined up a whole lot of contractors and work to be done, and if it went to the LTP, then this would hinder the project, and a lot of rework would have to be done. And so this would give them more certainty, and it would give them a head start, and they are ready to make a lot of progress on this project. So I believe that is one of the reasons why we recommended that this go forward. So I think we should still commit to these groups for giving the excess funding and allow ourselves to make progress on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just before we go on, we have some clarification around the reporting process. I'd just like to ask who's going to speak to that.
I can speak to that.
Yep.
So there is, if you go to the web page, there is a specific. It's not in the application document, but in the overarching guidelines and criteria, there's a section on reporting. So there's about 4 different elements that reference back to reporting. So if you're on the web page, there's 3 different criteria. Then at the bottom of that page, there's a link that will take you to some more detail. And there is, as Rob's mentioned, there's interim reporting on there. There's final reporting as well.
Councillor Provanov.
So thank you for that clarification. Are there timeframes there?
Through you, Madam Chair.
All right.
Yes, there's timeframes given around interim and final reporting.
Yeah.
So what are they? What are they?
Councillor Provanov, just to remind you that we're in debate, not question time, and maybe you can cover this off with your right of reply.
So I suppose my question is, unless we have
Is it not having
clarification
questions at the
on
moment?
the actual timeframes, I'd like that to stay there. Maybe the maybe instead of, and I hear what has been said in terms of the Climate and Environment Subcommittee, there might be some changes there. So maybe that should be changed to staff rather than a
Councillor
specific.
Pravana, this has been moved and seconded, so.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Okay, we'll leave that as that. My other comment too is if this council decides not to fund any of the applications that are before us, the money will be carried over to the next funding round next year. It won't be lost.
Right, thank you.
Rather than reallocating it this year, if that's the route you want to go down.
Thank you. Councillor Kirby.
I'd like to just make a comment. I'd go back to the original comments of the chair before we went into this, that our subcommittees are for the grunt work. And if we have questions about the grunt work that was done, that possibly needed to have been done, those questions, before we got to this point of recommendations. Otherwise, we undermine our subcommittees.
That's right.
So I will be supporting our subcommittee in the journey that they've been on with this, knowing that part of that subcommittee we have representatives of all of our community boards, including the Raumeti one, of which the chair has quite succinctly covered off their points, but there was a member in that situation as part of the debate and was present at that meeting as well. So I assume, because I wasn't part of the detail of that part, because I trust my team members, that has been followed through well. So I'll be supporting all of these recommendations.
Thank
today.
you. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to get some guidance from staff. I'd like to put a point of order with regards to how we address this situation. In relation to that, although I appreciate what Councillor Kirby was talking to, I find this is a contentious issue, this particular scenario, and it is separated out down there as well. I would ask that recommendation C be addressed before recommendation B. And I'd like recommendation C to be addressed as a standalone with regards to how we approach that. The reason I do that is if the decision supports C, no change. If the decision is not to support C, and I'm happy to ask for that, then option B would need to be amended as such.
I'm not sure I follow the logic.
Well, in option B, it says that the full, would be saying that the full 100,000 is to be allocated. That wouldn't be the case. It would only be...
Right.
Yeah, that's just a mathematical thing, that's all.
Yeah, so we'll go to C first.
Go to C first, and I'd like that to be treated as individually.
Yep. All right, thank you. Community Board Member Olsen.
Thanks. Yeah, just a couple of things. One, just to support with what Councillor Kirby says. Again, two things. The Raumati Community Board did have a member sitting at the meeting where we did these, and they had the opportunity to represent the community board there. So it should have been brought up then, really, and not now. It's just the other thing is, these subcommittees do have a delegation, and it has been, put to them, and there needs to be a point for these to do it. If there's going to be debate now, then it shouldn't be put to these other, subcommittees to do it, because it's just a waste of everybody's time. The whole process, it just throws the whole process out, because why? You guys, you have to support your subcommittees, and if you're giving them the delegation to do this and give you recommendations, then you should support that as well. But there was just one last point I just wanted to make on the cycling, the Cappy cycling action one is there was another point that was brought up which hasn't been mentioned now as regards to the funding that was given by the Raumati Community Board. And I may be wrong on this because I'm just going by memory, but from what I understood about that was that the money the Community Board granted had to be spent by a certain time, and if it wasn't spent, then they could not go back and request another grant for 3 years or something like that. And the funding that will come from the long-term plan would likely not be there in time for them to actually spend the community board money, because it doesn't give them enough money to actually do it. So if they don't get it through the end, I'm not sure. I'm just saying this is what was discussed. So I'm just saying this was discussed.
Right.
So I'm not sure how that works, but that was one of the things there. So
Okay.
yeah, it can be clarified. But, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper.
Yes, so I'm of the opinion, I actually voted against the money for the cycling action group. But you can't today look at that Kapiti Cycling Action Group funding without looking at the Waikanae Estuary Care Group. So in that committee, it was well discussed and reasonably, I don't want to say complex, but there was a lot of discussion around those two, and the decision to fund the Kapiti Cycle Action was in the context of the Waikanae Estuary Care Group. Now, it would be inappropriate for us to go back and start relitigating what was well discussed at that
That's right.
subcommittee.
Yep.
So for me, I think I concur with Glenn and others that we should trust our subcommittees that have the time and spent a lot of time discussing it. I lost that vote. And that's our democracy. I don't think we should be sitting here relitigating it personally. And
Thank you.
so I'll be supporting what was put through from Jocelyn's well-run meeting.
Thank you. Right. Any further debate? So we need the right of reply before we go one by one.
Yes, you could offer her another one.
Councillor Pravanov, is there anything additional you wish to say before we put these to the vote?
I'd just like to reiterate that we had a very long, robust conversation when we were deciding on how to fund the applications that were before us. It landed where it landed. We probably need to move on.
Thank you. All right. That being the case, we'll now put these recommendations to the vote by one. So recommendation A, that the Strategy, Operations and Finance Committee, blah, blah, blah. What was the following discussion?
It's just been suggested that C actually go first.
Oh, C goes first before A.
Because
Right.
A needs to be slightly
All right.
amended, just slightly.
Okay, okay. All right. So C, we'll start with C. Kapiti Cycle Action receive their full application amount. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? That's carried. Thank you. So now we can go back to. What do we do to do next? Do D next? Yep. So yeah, we'll put D that.
Bring the total funds to 100k.
Yeah. So D, as stated there in the table, that we fully allocate the funds.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I just want a point of clarity.
Yes.
Just for future, we've voted on this now. I asked for option C to be taken out and considered as a standalone.
We did.
No, we didn't. Wasn't
did.
debated, wasn't talked to. There was no question answered or anything along that sort of line. It was
We
literally,
had debate for the recommendations as a whole.
that wasn't what I asked for.
I'd like to move a procedural closure motion that we put these to the vote.
All of them?
I'd like to move a procedural closure motion that we now put these recommendations to the vote.
Right. So.
I'll second that motion.
Right. Thank you. All right. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yep, carried.
We need to vote now.
They've already
What?
been moved and seconded though.
They've already been moved and seconded.
So you can vote for each of them now.
Oh. Well, hang on. I'm getting really confused
Sorry,
now.
sorry, the procedural motion has been moved and seconded and has been voted for. So now you go through as you were planning to.
Oh, as we're,
No more
right.
discussion, no more discussion. Yeah. So we yeah. Yeah.
To put them to the vote, right? Okay. So now we go to D, right? Okay.
We go A to D.
A to D. No, we've got to do D first, surely. Because it's got the estuary care group.
I'll just withdraw my procedural motion. Just go ahead as you were.
So D.
I'm right.
Go up to D.
D, right? D. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried.
And then
A.
So A first.
All those in favour? Those against? Carried. And that leaves B. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Done.
Madam Chair, if I can just make a comment, please.
Yes.
In relation to that specific process that we just went through there, the reason why I wanted to separate out option C was because I believed that there was a process that could be discussed. That's our right in this committee. We take on board what our subcommittees talk to us about, but we don't have to rubber stamp it.
No, we don't.
We can push back against it. I was wanting to push back against that one. I don't believe that I was given the fair opportunity to do so. I'd just like it noted for future. I don't want to change anything now, but I'd like to know, so if we're going to go through that process again, that sort of stuff, that we go through, I'd like to take the time to make sure that we are doing it the way that councillors want them to be done, if you like.
Okay, so I thought it was clear that we were debating all of those recommendations when we were in debate, not one by one, because I started talking about A and I was corrected and said, no, we need to debate them as a whole.
I appreciate that, Madam Chair. What I was wanting to do is take one of those out of that debate, if you like, because to my opinion, my personal opinion, it was to be addressed, I wished it to be addressed separately. The debate could cover the whole topic, but that particular option C, I wanted to actually address as an individual.
Okay, well,
we're behind it now.
There's clearly been a misunderstanding on that front. Thank you. Right, back to our chair. Oh, no. No, you can do them.
Okay. Should be really quick. Wait, where's the rush? Okay. No, it's okay. I can pull it up. But, here we go. Alrighty. So we've just got one more item on our agenda. Item number 9, confirmation of minutes on page 145. These are the minutes of the 15th of June meeting. Is there someone who'd be happy to move that they're an accurate record? Councillor Pravanov. Seconder? I'll second that. All those in favour of the minutes being confirmed as a true and accurate record of the 15th of June meeting? All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. And there are no public excluded minutes to confirm. So now we come to a closing karakia. Kim, I wonder if you would want to close us? Otherwise I can, but I feel like I'd love to hear from you. So over to you.
Kia ora tātou. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa. Te ata whai o tō tātou araki o ihu karaiti me te aroha o te atua me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu ake, ake, āmene.
Kia ora, Kim, and thanks everyone for your attendance and the engagement throughout the hui. I know that we normally at the end of each of our meetings just stick around for a couple of brief seconds to kind of reflect. So did we stay on point? Did we have a good... Oh yeah, actually we'll...
Can I suggest we do that offline?
Yeah, we'll turn the live streaming off, sorry. We'll just wait, we'll just pause.
We're gonna do it live.
We'll just pause, we'll just meditate for 1 minute.